Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm the Conflict of Interest Administrator here at University Personnel, and you're in the Conflict of Interest Annual Filing Overview. And we're going to have a Q&A session to answer questions regarding about what is all this conflict of interest all about. And on our agenda for today, we have a lot to cover, and I'll try to, there's a conflict of interest is very complex, but I'll try to just pinpoint and summarize on some little things that I think are important. So on our agenda is who needs to file the form. It's known as a statement of economic interest. Why do we need to have you file this? We'll go over what are designated positions, disclosure categories, and what's the form that gets filed, the frequency of the filing requirement, and also, how do I file the form? Limitations on gifts if you're being gifted with something. And then we'll go over our UP Conflict of Interest website and what resources I have available for you all. And then there's also a CSULearn compliance course that is required that anybody who is in a designated position needs to take, and it's called Avoiding Conflicts of Interest. And then we'll open it up for a Q&A. And so if while I'm presenting, you have a question, put it on our chat, and at the end, we'll go over it. And then providing you with our contact information if you have any questions. Okay, so let's get started. So who needs to file the California Form 700? So basically it includes anyone who's involved in making or who has influence in making university decisions where a potential conflict may be present, and that could significantly affect personal economic interest. And usually these filers are managers, are buyers and contract specialists, are procurement card holders, and specifically only for those that are with approving authorization. And all of our department chairs, there's independent contractors, and then principal investigators of grants and contracts. And they usually are going to be working with our research foundation because they actually file different forms, very similar, but it's called a California Form 700U. Next. And so why do we need to have you all file this? Basically, as you know, in HR worlds and everything that we get here, it's always about the law, state and federal mandates. So in this case, it's the Fair Political Practices Commission, an acronym FPPC. That's normally how I call it. And the Political Reform Act. So it requires the CSU as an agency to adopt and communicate this conflict of interest codes. And the act contains a general prohibition against conflicts of interest. And the main thing is that conflict of interest law seeks to minimize the extent to which public employees pursue their own financial interest at the expense of the public interest. And really, basically, it comes down because we are a state employee and we get state money that, we don't misuse any of that money for our own personal use. And under this act, no CSU employee shall participate in making or attempt to use their official position to influence a CSU decision in which they have a financial interest. If for any reason you do have to, a university employee shall not vote, make a recommendation, or in any way participate in a personnel or financial decision if such participation constitutes a conflict of interest. So if at any point in time there is a conflict, you may have to tell your manager, I can't decide if we can sign off on this contract or not because there's a conflict of interest based on my designated position, and we'll go over that next. And regarding designated positions, it includes those that participate in or influence decisions regarding the physical master plan of the university, the total enrollment of the university, the license, lease, purchase, or sale of real property of the university, the purchase of supplies, materials, commodities, any equipment, services, or work for the university, school, department, or area that you work in. And the other one is the entering into, amending construction service contracts in connection with construction contracts for the university. And finally, anything with the investment of university funds. And so let's go ahead and take a look at designated positions. So it's basically all the working titles and positions that we've found based upon my reviewing of all the position descriptions that everybody has to see if it meets the criteria of being a conflict of interest. So it's a long list, very, very long list. I would say it's approximately like 200. And next to that is the disclosure categories, which I'll be talking shortly. So yeah, so it has a listing of all the positions that have been approved by the FPPC agency to have to file this California Form 700. So we can go back out, Carrie. Thank you. And let's continue. So that designated position list that you saw. So as I mentioned, I have reviewed all the position descriptions and determined that they meet the criteria for conflict of interest. What I do, and which I just recently did, was we have to submit that list to the chancellor's office. And so in every CSU campus has to do that. At the end, the chancellor's office has to submit that list of all the positions that we have at the CSU level, and it has to go to the FPPC. They review and they determine if it gets approved, because that'll be the list that we keep for several years. So if you see that your position is listed there on the designated list, you are considered an assuming office filer. If at any point in time, let's say we have like a new recruitment, a new manager comes in and then they're not on the list, they are going to be considered, and they meet the criteria for being a conflict of interest filer, they're going to be considered an interim assuming office. Once it's that time again to submit a list to the chancellor's office for conflict of interest and getting those new titles approved, they get submitted to the FPPC. If they approve, at that point in time, that position is going to be considered an assuming office. So I hope that's clear. And so let's move forward. And so as I mentioned, and when I showed the designated position list, next to that was on the right-hand side was a number that's called a disclosure category. So each designated position is assigned to one or more of the following disclosure categories and must disclose reportable financial interest in each category assigned. There's a total of 7, and it's basically you're going to get assigned to that category based on the type of work that you're performing. And so if I can have you click on there. And so basically it states that, you know, each designated position. So basically whatever you're doing in your role, whether you're purchasing equipment, if you are, let's say, dealing with contracts, or where you're making decisions regarding our real estate here at the university, you're going to get placed into one of these categories. So as I mentioned earlier, there's like independent contractors, and then we have consultants. So all these categories will designate you into this based on what you're doing. The majority of our employees here are going to fall under category 2, which, you know, they're usually purchasing a lot of items for the university, whether, you know, we have to buy computers or work with vendors to provide, let's say, desks or anything for the university. So obviously at a very higher level, maybe like the president would be at a category 1, which they may have to make decisions on real property anything that is located within 2 miles of the campus. So it's very specific, but that's how I review, and I designate you into one of these categories based on what I find in the position description that I review. So next slide. And so what form is the one that gets filed? So basically the Political Reform Act requires most state and government employees to publicly disclose their personal assets and income by filing the California Form Statement of Economic Interest. And that form is actually very long. There's it's like a 23-page document. So if I can have you just quickly click on there, Carrie. And so it's going to give you a variety of information. So depending on what you're doing, and I had mentioned earlier, like let's say Google invites you for some type of conference and they want to pay for like travel, or they want to send you to a conference in New York. They're going to pay for travel, your airfare, meals, and such. And there's really nothing that is business related to the university. You probably should not accept that. If it is a business requirement and there's something that we're going to maybe contract with them, you can attend, but you will have to on Schedule D, you will have to report that as a gift and document what the date of the event, when did that happen, what was the, what did you get in return for that? And then if you're the one who has to make the decision, if let's say we're going to contract something with Google, you may have to tell your manager that you can be the person that makes that final decision. So if for some reason you cannot do that and you're the one that has to make that decision, then you probably are best as a state employee to decline having Google pay for all that airfare and all the travel and goodies. And sometimes they will offer tickets and things like that. So like as I mentioned earlier, because we are considered state employees, those it's not going to be seen in a good way. So there's very specific things that you'll have to review in detail. I'm not going to go over all the little things because it's so complex and there's so many things, but just remember that if there's anything in your job that you're doing where there may be a perception that you're getting a financial gain of anything that you are dealing with, you probably should not accept. If you're not sure, you can always email me and give me a little scenario. Tell me like the dollar amount, what your role is in or your purpose of attending a conference that you're getting invited to. And then I may also, which I normally always go to our general counsel and our chancellor's office, our Form 700 team, to kind of give them the scenario, and then they'll let me know how you can proceed. So every case is different. So like I said, sometimes I don't even know the answer because it's a complex situation. And so, but I know that I will always give you what your next step should be and how you should proceed. So let's continue. And so how do you file this form? So you file the form electronically. The CSU has a pretty current new system that we've had for the past 3 years. It's called e-disclosure. And then I will put you in the system, pretty much put all your information about, your date that you were appointed into a designated position, what your name, last name, all the what your disclosure category is, so that when you get an email sent to your sjsu.edu email, the form will kind of be already pre-filled out for you. The email comes from form700.csusouthtechhosting.com. And then in that email, you will get information on how to log in. I think if you're using it for the first time, it'll give you like a temporary password, and then you're able to change it to whatever you want. And pretty much looks like that little image that I have in there. So I know a lot of people sometimes are confused and they think it's like a phishing or a scam. And because of that, then I normally will also send you an individual email letting you know that you've been, based upon my review of your position description, you are in a designated position to file a conflict of interest, and I'll kind of give you a heads up. So when you do receive that email, you're kind of not you don't know what's this email. You may sometimes I get people that also email our IT department, which is the right thing to do, right? If you're not sure. So that's always any communication for conflict of interest is going to come from this email address. So let's go over to the next slide. And then what's the frequency of when you need to file? So obviously when you are new and you get appointed into a designated position, so you'll have 30 days to file. And then also on an annual basis, the forms are usually due in April, so the beginning of April. If it falls on a weekend like this year, we have the Cesar Chavez holiday on the 1st, so they're actually due on April the 2nd. And I usually give employees 30 days notice of this filing requirement for the annual filing. And then also the only people that are excluded is anybody who started, for example, in 2023 from October 1st through December 31st. They won't have to file until April of 2025. So because when they first come in, they're assuming the position. So that's what they file for, assuming. And also when you leave the position, you'll have to file within 30 days of your effective date of separation. So like I said, all this communication is going to be coming from our e-disclosure system from the southtechhosting.com address that I just mentioned. So next. And so I did touch upon briefly earlier regarding limitations on gifts. So there are every year there's a dollar amount of when you could accept as a gift. And a gift is any payment or other benefit that confers a personal benefit for which a state employee does not provide payment or services of equal or greater value. And gifts from any single source may not exceed. So this year, last year, and this year, it'll be $590 per calendar year. So if you're getting little things throughout the year, swag or like tickets, and they don't exceed $590, you want to make sure that you track that. Anything going over that, you may, depending on what your, like I mentioned earlier, what your role is going to be, you may have to decline anything that is going to exceed the $590. And for employees who file California Form 700 under the state agency conflict of interest code, this limit applies only if the employee would be required to report income or gifts from that source of the California Form 700 as outlined from the disclosure category. So those 7 disclosure categories, if next to the designated position, your code only or your category was only 2, so anything related to that type of business transaction that you received a gift from that, it wouldn't be under any other category, only under that business type of work that you do under the category that is listed next to your designated position title. So next. And so here we have just a little quick screenshot of all the information that is found on our university personnel conflict of interest page. And so when you first log in, you're going to go into our resources and policies or form our policies and guidelines, and it'll take you right into our conflict of interest page. And so here you're going to find all the information regarding on our left side on the annual filing and training, which I'll talk in a minute, and then just any forms and resources. And I have the entire list that I showed you earlier for the designated position list. And if you have any, we have like some FAQs of frequently asked questions that we get often. And so there is, I could be giving fines for not returning this. Form is required to be filled out. I've been a little lenient and trying to kind of email employees to get the form submitted to me. So, and I think most campuses try not to have to fine employees, but because it is a requirement, I could fine on a daily basis a $10 up to $100 for late filing. So that's why, I usually send you emails and let you know that your form is coming due. And so you don't want to get there. Like I said, I've been very flexible and try to work with everybody to, just it's not a very difficult form to fill out, and I make myself available too, so that if I need to do a Zoom meeting and walk you through on how to fill out the form, I'll do that. So just know that the FPPC and the Political Reform Act does allow us to fine you, but we don't want to get there. So like I said, if anybody needs help, you can always reach me and I'll be able to assist you on filing your form on time. Next. And so you are also required to take the Avoiding Conflicts of Interest through CSULearn within the first 6 months of being in a designated position. And then once you take it, if you continue to be in that position, then it'll be due reoccurring every 2 years thereafter. The course is not very long. It's approximately 25 minutes. So you should be able to go through that quickly. And all the notices or reminders about the requirement of this course come from CSULearn at sjsu.edu. And you'll get them when it's been assigned to you, when it's coming due, and when you're overdue. So please get those courses done, because we do monthly reports here, and we are sending those over to managers so that they know which employees are not getting their compliance training done. Okay. So let's see, what questions do you have? Let's check our chat.
Nothing in the chat right now, Maggie.
Okay.
I did put all the links to the various pages we looked at.
Thank you, Carrie.
Those all in the chat, so y'all should be able to get those. And I think you're going to send the slides out too, right, Maggie, so they can have them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So if anybody has any questions, please type them up or let me know. Hopefully this is was helpful. It's, like I said, it's very complex and there's so many different scenarios. I can't touch upon all the different scenarios that you get, but like I said, one of the most frequently requests that I get is that a lot of people get invited to conferences, and where they're going to get, like I said, their airfare, meals and things like that paid for. And these companies usually are starting to get pretty smart and actually send the form to the employee and say, okay, make sure that you check in with your HR department and the conflict of interest administrator and have them sign off on the form. This is kind of like the total value of what you're getting from us. And then, if everything's good, I'll sign off on that form so that you can attend the conference, and so that there's no conflict. And if I don't know, like I said, I will always go to our general counsel for advice on how you should proceed, or if you should decline the invitation for the conference, or if you're able to accept. But then there's going to be some schedules on the California Form 700 that you'll need to file and report the conference that you attended.
So Maggie, I think that was one that you just talked about, but Lisa asked, can you talk about some common conflicts that directors of departments might incur? So thinking about like department chairs, school directors, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
If you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I would say, at a high level positions that you are all in, there could be a scenario where, let's say, we're ordering laptops or computers from Apple, and your You own stock from Apple that is over like $2,000, right? It's on your own. It's not like on a mutual fund or any of that, but you own individual stock Apple, and you're the one in your role that you're gonna say for the department, we need 50 laptops. In that case, that's a conflict of interest because you're a stockholder. And so you're going to get some kind of financial income out of that stock, and you're a owner basically, right, of Apple stock. So you would probably want not to be able to make that decision to say, oh, yes, I'm going to sign off on purchasing those 50 computers or, iPads. You're going to want to have a discussion with your direct manager and say, I'm going to have to not be the one who signs off on that contract, and then I'll leave that to you to sign off on it. So that's one example. What other one? I mean, that's normally
I think I can give an example just
sure.
from my own perspective
Okay.
because I'm a filer. And so I previously oversaw our recruiting
Oh,
area
that's
here
right.
in University Personnel. And so I dealt with a lot of our recruiting vendors, and they would send me stuff and invite me to things and go to things. I also oversee our well-being, which so we deal with some of our health vendors for that as well. Now we have
That's
no
right.
choice here on our health vendors. Of course,
Mhm.
that's all system-wide done, but we do have choices on the kinds of training we might do with our health vendors. And so a few years back, Kaiser actually offered me 2 playoff tickets to a Warriors game. Now, y'all, when I tell you I wanted to take those tickets, I wanted to take those tickets.
Mm.
But A, I knew that was not a good look. B, I knew they were well over the maximum amount that I was allowed to accept. And as a filer and being someone who has great influence on whether we pay for Kaiser things from a training perspective or not, I had to say no. It hurt me. It hurt me, y'all, a lot. But because they wanted to gift those to the university, some of our staff was able to go who are not conflict of interest filers. So we were still able to accept the gift on that perspective, but I just couldn't accept it. I couldn't be involved with any of that. So those are the kinds of things that come up sometimes. And there's actually a whole section on our website and from the Chancellor's Office guide about accepting tickets to events. And that one comes up a lot. And whether it's a concert, a game, a conference, that one comes up a lot. So that's a personal example I can give for me. So I'm still sad about it, but
Yeah. So overall, it's going to be like, is there a business decision where it's not going to be seen as you're getting something in return, and then you're going to be like, oh, they gave me tickets, they gave me something in return. Oh, let's go ahead and sign off on that, and let's do a 2-year contract with them, because it's going to be perceived as, that kind of like this for that. So you don't want that perception. Any other questions?
Lisa said there's not so much of that in nursing.
Oh,
Darn it.
yeah. And like I
We
said,
don't get tickets.
yeah, I would say the majority of those in designated positions, it's very seldom where there's anything to report. So on the form, you'll just say none. I would say
Yeah.
at least anywhere from like 90%, they indicate that there's nothing, no conflict. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome,
that's
Lisa.
great.
So if there are no more questions, then that is it. Thank you for joining me today. Like I said, I hope this helped you. And here's our up-compliance@sjsu.edu, where you can email me if you ever do get tickets or anything and you don't know if to accept or not, or any other scenarios. Send me an email, provide me with a little information what your role will be in attending like a certain conference. And then that way, if I don't know, I forward that over to our general counsel, and they'll be able to guide me on how to tell you if you can accept or not. Or you can always call me directly on my direct phone number here. And so other than that, thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.